What I'd like to talk about next is kneeling and sitting positions. Couple things to consider here. One, our bodies are all different, plus injuries on top of that. So it's not a matter of age and not moving the same way. It could be you're young and you injured yourself and you can't get into some of these positions, or some of them just do not feel comfortable and they don't work for you. If you're not comfortable in it, and if you're tense in a lot of these positions, then chances are it's not the right position for you. Now, I'm gonna go over a series of kneeling positions that have been taught for a very, very long time, including sitting positions as well. And one of the things is that this is a foundation. What works for me may not necessarily work for you. And like I tell a lot of my students, is that at the end of class, we're there to be yesterday's version of you and make you better. Okay, I'm gonna give you my opinion of why I like to do something a certain way. And when you go to see other teachers as well, they're telling you their way of the way they like to do things that have worked best for them, either currently or in the past. And your job is to create the hybrid of what works best for you. So as an example, as we go through this, there are going to be some positions that you're going to like and dislike. There's going to be some positions that, from the shooter perspective back here, they seem okay, but downrange, they don't look good. They're not proving themselves, meaning your accuracy is not what it should be based on that position. And that's where you will make modifications to make the positions work best for you. So bottom line is, how do we choose a position? When do we choose that position to get into? Because some of them cost time, some of the positions cost accuracy. So everything is a trade-off. The next thing that we're gonna go into is the use of the sling, because if you have a really good sling, it will aid you in making a longer range shot or a more critical shot. Remember, when it comes to kneeling is generally something we do either to get behind cover and concealment, so we're gonna do that fast, we're up, we're down, we're moving, we're gone, or we need the support because it is a critical shot. Maybe it's a law enforcement officer in a active shooter scenario, or out in an urban area like Dallas, where now he has to make a headshot because that's all the threat is presenting itself with. In that case, utilizing the sling in a good position is going to aid in that shot. If it's a longer range shot, and it doesn't matter whether it's for something tactical, it could even include hunting. The use of the sling is always going to aid us. Now, typically, if I am out and about and my hierarchy of threat is at distance, my arm is usually inside the sling. However, if I'm doing any type of up close and personal work, or you're out on the street where there's a lot of different cars, vehicles, parking lots, whatever it is, or CQB, at that point, my arm's out of the sling, because this allows more flexibility for shifting shoulders. This also gives me the ability to do a better transition than if my arm's wrapped in a sling, along with reloads and clearing malfunctions on this if the need arises. So sling position, let's look at that next. Talk about kind of sling setup. First thing that I like to do is I want the sling to go to the back right-hand side. In this case, it's clipped into the Magpul CTR stock on the right-hand side of the gun, and that keeps it from coming up underneath my throat area, especially if I've got to move the gun from one shoulder to the other shoulder really quickly, or I find myself in a compromising position. The other thing is, for a 2-point, I like to go all the way to the end of the gun. I know a lot of people like to go to the mid portion of the gun, but I need help at the front of this thing where it gets heavy, being held up, to give me a little bit of extra support. So for me, I go from the very back to the very front on the opposite side. This just happens to be a Vickers Blue Force gear sling. I like that little bit of pad on the back. It does help, especially, you know, if you're moving and whatnot. However, my sling isn't a holster. So I still have my hands on a gun. I'm still ready to shoot. And then as far as tightness goes, when we're looking at this, and this is one of the big things, I don't like tails. I don't like a lot of things hanging off to where it could get snagged. So with that said, my sling right now is set up to where when I bring this gun up, I can do one of a couple things. I can either bring forearm up just a little bit to kind of tighten up, at the same time, almost bringing my arms down just a little bit, and that'll create a little bit of tautness within the sling. Now remember, I'm just showing you a couple different ways. So one of these may work best for you, some of them may not. So again, this is up for you to try. And then what you're looking for is how stable do I see my red dot and or my crosshairs. The other thing that I can do is not only bring the arm either up, I can also bring elbow down, and that will tighten things significantly as well. So we do have a few different options in regards to, you want enough room in the sling to where it's not so tight you can't move in it, but you also don't want it loose to where you're still holding up the majority of the gun. I should be able to take this hand off and hold this gun very steady with just this arm right here. So that's a really good test for you to find out and make sure that the sling is in that position. Once it's in that position, I generally leave it there, and then this is my running gun position. So if I need to, I can immediately put my arm right back into the sling and I'm good. I don't have to keep moving the slider back and forth unless I'm stowing this gun, putting it behind my back or something of that nature where I need to tighten it up. So again, just some other options to consider. What are we supposed to be seeing downrange? Well, we don't want to see a lot of movement. But when you start shooting at 100 on this bullseye, especially when I run my classes at some point, you're gonna love and hate these bullseyes. This is a Kyle Lamb VTAC target and it works really well. So this 6-inch bullseye, you're sitting here holding your red dot on and it's dancing on and it's dancing off. And in a lot of cases, it's really quite a challenge. And even if you're in a really good position, it doesn't mean you're gonna have zero movement. Depending upon how critical of a shot you're having to take or how far down range you're taking that shot, you're always going to see some form of movement. What you need to look for is, are your crosshairs spending more time over here, and occasionally they go over here into the bullseye area, and you're just trying to time that as best as possible? Or are you actually doing a natural point of aim, meaning you're not holding muscle tension and naturally it's spending more time over this area? It goes out a little bit, but it spends the majority of the time hovering in the area in which you want to shoot and engage. And that's a good way to check if you have natural point of aim. You should not be using your muscles in order to hold the gun into position. You should have it naturally pointing at the target. And remember, we're trying to break our shot on the bottom of our breaststroke. So sometimes that's great, but other times I may actually have to take a pregnant pause, hold my breath to make that shot as well. So it isn't always on the bottom of our breaststroke. Sometimes we got to get a little creative. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is speed kneeling. Now, typically, if you have a narrow stance, your options are body weight on your kneecap, especially on concrete and or broken rock or anything of that nature. Most of us aren't wearing knee pads when we are out and about doing things, or your stance again is narrow and you kneel right here. All that I'm trying to do is basically with a wider gait, squat right down and put all my weight on my left leg and just leave this dangling back. Pro, I can get up and down really quickly and move. Drawback to it is that there's no support. So this technique has no support to it.